Sometimes there are answers to lingering questions, often through hard work or thorough research, but also sometimes the answers require something more than time spent. These answers are usually for something beyond our ken. Prolongation of life, a better connection with society, a general understanding of life, or maybe it's for nothing. Through time, people have spent theirs seeking out something more. Out of luck and down, we ask things beyond our own humanity to help us. Life seeking beyond life help. We attribute differing religious connotations upon various beings. Soil, water, trees, the sun, animals. They offer sustenance in many forms for our continued survival, and we would think to pray to these things or supernatural entities as means of prolongation. And we'd find correlation to our hopes cast upon them to actual success through crops, livestock, and our own flesh growing positively. Nowadays it's a bit different. Some of those things we pray to aren't as known or have changed drastically. We might just pray to a singular God for every answer. Though complexities to human life have also advanced, moment-to-moment life isn't as it was. It's not just survival by means of growing and hunting and having a roof over our heads. It's now this weird thing where you gotta go to a building and sort papers, products, or type lists of numbers or names, talk to people about said numbers and objects for hours at a time, whether that's standing or sitting the whole while. Depression has become more of the norm now. Disparity between economic classes growing wider. Working harder doesn't ever mean that you're bringing more home to the table. It just gets you more work to do and less energy to do it. Where old gods sufficed in our basic needs, there hasn't been a similar replacement for our complex societal needs. There's no god of customer service, god of stocking, god of dishwashing, god of schedules, or whatever that we can turn to. So we find ourselves stuck in a situation that has no clear answer or way out. Easy to find ourselves lost in a cycle of praying to nothing in particular and finding ourselves worse off than the day before, beat down by those in power. So, what can we do? In the worlds of Yames, there's some answers, things beyond our capabilities as humans that we can turn to in some fashion. We can attain more than we're allowed in our own bodies, though as we'll find through some great sacrifice. Yames brings to the table a variety of smaller experiences which you can find on his itch page, which I'll link in the description, that explore these concepts more than I can. His work is elaborate and well written, full of body horror and haunting realities. There's still hope, but there's always a price. I'm going to talk about these works in full, so if you're wanting to go through them at your own pace, I'd highly recommend just checking that page and going through all of that you find interesting. And they are quite interesting. I also kind of touch on Growing My Grandpa, but I also have a video talking about that game separately, which I'm also linking. So let's take a look at these games, from oldest to newest. Please enjoy this ride. Made for the How Have You Been jam, via Negativa explores a world where God, a tangible being, physically exists. You are forced to walk along, bumping along others who have met God. These people were asked to sacrifice something of their person to them. It's not really ever explained why this happens or why you have to sacrifice various parts of you to it, but that's the state of the world we're witnessing. When God comes for you, you are prompted with offering your eyes, legs, ears, brain, and or heart. Offering the eyes takes your ability to see anything, and ends the game by telling you you're lost wandering in the darkness forever. Offering your legs slows down your movement, your ears will disable audio and you lose dialogue with the other wanderers. Brain makes more... Sacrificing the brain makes words incomprehensible and your heart outright kills you. Getting to the third sacrifice asks you to offer everything. Death is unity with everything. It's short and makes you kind of wonder the expanses of nothingness, as the descriptor suggests, offering up your mind, body, and soul to an entity that oftentimes feels like they're not giving anything back, despite what everyone says. Sacrifice for what reward? Just to do it? To say that we're doing it for some greater cause, or more commonly to fix a problem we're facing that are beyond our ability to solve? Trading for a miracle, essentially? Sacrifices are typically a means of celebration of life, through offering up our own life to the greater beyond. Destroying the physical and offering up the spirituality of it. It's a means to maintain a connection to our relationship with deities. We make them happy to make ourselves happy, yeah? Our offering for theirs in return, it only ever seems to make us lesser off in this instance, though. It's possible that it's just to appease this god, preventing its ire, but either way, our reward for giving up ourselves is death in unity. The art is simple and charming, honestly throws me back to older games with a simpler color palette, portraying a stark and empty world, sparse details with mountains in the distance, and few people about. Music is good. It kind of evokes the feeling of finally, after exhaustive effort, finding what you're looking for, though drenched heavily in sadness. We do get a preview of how Yames approaches their work going forward, at least from the current arrangement of games we have access to in the year of our Lord 2024, in August as I write this. I still recommend checking it out. Me talking about it kind of doesn't do it justice in actually experiencing it as it unfolds before you. Lips Like Vellum came from a Darktober jam in 2018. It's a demo for an intended larger project, but I'm not sure if that's going to come to fruition anytime soon, but that's okay, there's still plenty to look at here. You are a small girl whose sister, Clara, has gone missing. Clara tells you this, revealing to you that your father has some false intentions. You both were intended to be taken by God. Clara reveals that there's a way out of the room you're locked in and to meet someone named Bob. So you investigate anything left behind in this point-and-click adventure to get out. Like we'll see more and more in Yames' work, we discover some well-written background lore, obviously placed due to its relevancy of offerings to spirits, fairy doors, and crabs. Interestingly, we can also find a page of Clara's diary that talks about offering Bob some blood. It's going crazy for it. Once you solve a simple puzzle, you get into the closet and uncover a small hole, and once you've equipped yourself with a mirror shard, it's off into the darkness. We are within the realm of Fae and other supernatural beings, having traversed the fairy door. We've invited the attention of everything here by entering, and places like these are known to host tricksters. Being wary and following the set trail is key to our success. Real quick, I was trying to do any kind of research looking into fairy doors on the internet. Initial findings are just links to buying little doors on Etsy or whatever. My own fault, completely forgetting about people actually placing these things. But anyway, I found it interesting stumbling upon websites dedicated to talking about this sort of thing. Older websites with web page structures like how it's supposed to be. Difficult to navigate at times and an occasional failed link. It's heartening to see this kind of stuff still up, even if it's barely updated anymore. Gnome news! There's a dark tunnel, and traversing down it, you'll see a little dude who offers his luck, and further in, you get to offer blood to this masked snake. Presumably Bob. Bob describes his deep interest in blood, specifically young blood, and eating children. Awfully kind of him to not come after us, but after our offering, he does give us a way out of our room, as requested. Just to check the window in the bedroom, and lo and behold, the big pink friend is here. They claim to be an angel from heaven. They give us a bone key, with the idea that we'll sacrifice something for it. The key opens our door out into the hallway, which leads to a big boy. He tells us something so deeply haunting and horrifying it stands to reason that you should look away and cover your ears during this segment. He tells us, with his jagged voice, "Well, that's the end of the demo." So there isn't anything else to investigate, but we do get dabblings of sacrifice to otherworldly supposed angelic beings, which is already a familiar concept from Via Negativa. These sisters have clearly faced some level of abuse through being forcibly locked away in their room, only way out being a secret fairy door. It's unclear why God wants you or what the cost is to escape. Everything is a transaction. A larger being wanting something from us, smaller things. We don't get to see more to extrapolate exactly where this game would have headed and exactly what's discussed, but what is here is certainly neat. Aspects of these concepts are touched upon again in later works. Assets were borrowed from other artists, as mentioned in the description, and the music starts getting darker and more pulsating, haunting, crawling darkly. I love it. I still recommend giving it a look at. It's a short experience, but it's cool. And, out of curiosity, I looked a bit into crabs and their symbolic meaning, typically associated with resilience and transformation, moving on from the past towards the future. Its strong shell, tough in the faces of its enemies and through its regenerative properties, allowing for regrowth. I can't say for sure that this is what the intent was for the brief crab recipe, but it's fitting. Moving on from our lonely bedroom and toughing out what lurks beyond the fairy door, offering up our blood to a snake. We're just a little crab girl making it big in the little crab world. So, trauma comes at us unexpectedly, undeserved and cruel. Life has a way of taking away aspects of us at random, and we're forced to consider it and try our best to move forward with our wounds and scars. In both of these instances so far, at least we have a choice in the matter, whether by what we're losing or that we are losing at all. This could be even more cruel, though, by placing this squarely on our shoulders, but it's either that or going back to the way things are normally, which is much to our physical and mental decline. In Via Negativa, we don't really know what was before this moment. It's up to us to imagine and figure out why we're on this journey in the first place. Maybe it's to get away from something in our past or where we were before, or maybe it is to meet God in this strange place. This game was born through depression and the horrors of the expansive emptiness, forced to wander in it, lost. With lips like Vellum, it's to finally escape the hands of our Father, unseen but controlling. There's no positivity to staying here besides an actual bed and roof, though that doesn't mean much if we're only just surviving. To take guidance from a vague sense of family into roads unknown. Both of these instances, we're seeing a struggle of the mind. We are at a loss of understanding the situation, ourselves, and everything else around us. Unclear paths ahead, just a few crumbs left to guide us forward into darkness. It'd be easier to take the hand of anything that would offer it in these scenarios. Stuck in limbo, without a light in sight. Who are we to judge them in these situations if it were us stuck in the same situation? True, though, the hands offered to us are crooked, hostile, and uncertain still. A general through line with these games has been a direct one-on-one with the being. No one else around to even witness these events in the moment. They might be talked about later if the character were to survive, but otherwise it's just it and I. Maybe through that lens it's easier to understand why we'd take their hand. In poorest conditions, we've seen people make decisions that might ultimately do harm to themselves, but it's the only option they have. Nothing else has worked or is available. What other choice do we have? In darkness, even the unfamiliar hand could bring us into the light. What if we had a clear understanding of what horrors lie before us? Would that be easier to take in what we're finding ourselves in? Typically, understanding eases fears, though it doesn't entirely assuage the feeling of danger when in the face of it, but maybe with a hint of revelry. Let's get back to these games, which the first one I find is an interesting turning point for how the rest are approached through the scope of science. Discover My Body is another short experience in which you take the role of a medical student examining the effects of a lab-synthesized fungi on a human host. The goal being to bring people together, quote, distrusting other institutions, end quote. It takes place in 2040, so look forward to that one in 16 years' time all. This is our first touch on actually studying a transcendental being. We meet our subject, who is quite excited to show you the process of a physical psychical transvolution flowering. In effect, we're examining different layers of the subject's body as the fungi transforms them via scanning locations, topical, skeletal, and nervous side. It took me a moment to realize how the icon works, but use it to slide over the image to uncover it. Clicking on individual spots and the icon will trace it to that point. Hitting the scan button shows hot points to reveal more information. As one would notice a face on a person's leg, I avoided eye contact with it and looked to other levels, and come back around to the very obvious first signs of flowering. Naturally, the body would be resistant to these changes, but there is an inhibitor implanted by those who seek this flowering to let the process advance. By the way, there's some more intense body horror visuals from this point forward, and if that irks you, hey, I suggest to back out of the video, or close your eyes for a while and listen to my voice. The process in which to undertake this transformation is horrifying in its own right. Installing inhibitors in the mind, bone-deep injections. But this character is nothing but excited to have this take place to transcend. Upon the next phase, they rapidly develop, losing their legs and hands, growing something incomprehensible. It's grown deep into the body and already started associating this mind with others that have grown like this. It's attaining unity. Upon examining the rest of these layers, they exclaim that they are happy and rapidly lose their human form, sacrificing themselves to become one of a larger group. It's surreal to witness. Someone ecstatic, rapidly losing oneself and becoming a part of a larger whole, marrying their mind with others. Discover My Body ends quickly, but it's a ride that starts really showing what Yames is capable of. The visual style is starting to get better and more unique. A grimy and gross feeling permeating through the visuals, but thankfully through a filter. There is a morbidity into what's happening, but I can't help but admire the genuine happiness that is experienced through the events occurring. In a weird way, we're all already connected deeply, obviously by means of the internet and social media, readily available at all of our fingertips in our pockets. It wasn't even that long ago that the internet was its own hub at a computer desk, and that's where it lived. But I'm getting sidetracked. What these people want with this transformation is not just a temporary and brief connection with people, allowing us to retain ourselves, but for a direct and permanent connection to everyone's mind. Sure, maybe in this way we'd attain a higher level of respect amongst one another, understanding each other and achieving said unity. In a sense, it could be seen as a heaven of sorts, the next stage after life, even if it's just a transformation. But is it still you? There's a humor in how passé it is for this person to transform, but it's making me question a lot of what it means to be human and to change so fundamentally in such a short period of time. Certainly this would be one of many people joining together through these means, and presumably we would have seen more of it in its sequel, Discover Our Bodies, of which I can only really find development logs on Yames' YouTube channel. Supposedly they're still working on it. So hey, there might be more to talk about through his Patreon channel, if you're so inclined to subscribe to that. But what was shown of it back in 2020, it looked like a huge step forward. But anyways, Discover My Body is really good. This being the point where I really started to see fruition to what I really love about these so far. Water Womb World finds us in control of a man in pursuit of the truth behind humanity's origin, their fall from grace. He believes that it's found in Gaspar's zone, deep within the ocean, traversing there via a submersible lab containing a good amount of tools to help aid in our research. We fill up on gas, our nets, and take a gander at ourselves. Looking good. And begin searching the ocean bed. Gameplay is relatively straightforward. You wander the bed between 3 columns, going up and down, and sifting through the dirt, finding relics and catching fish with our nets, whilst being wary of our oxygen limit. The process of sifting is just moving to a tile, hitting sift, and hoping something will come up. Best method is just to go to each tile one by one, as re-sifting the same spot won't reveal anything new. Slightly tedious, but in the pursuit of truth, it is all worth it. Catching a fish is probably the most problematic. You control movement by clicking on the side arrows, and attempting to catch by then clicking on the throw net button. Fish often flee the tile they're sitting in quickly, so having to flick your mouse to precisely the throw net button can be a little bit of a nuisance. So make sure you prepare a bit in aim labs before playing. You won't have to do these actions too much though, it's a relatively short game. Let's delve into each of our findings, though, as we progress here. First session out, we needed 2 siftables and 1 fish. Let's see what we got. Human skull, a dive mask, and a strange fish. Truly, we've been blessed this day. And, hold on. This track is nice. Sorry, let's research, shall we? Up first is the skull, an Adamite skull to be precise. According to our cyber catechism Computron, this human had lived for a millennium and was born 10 generations after the primeval fall. 5% corruption. How on earth was something like this here? I'm not gonna lie, I sat here for a moment stunned by the breadth of what's occurring here. Our first reveal is already a mind-numbingly startling revelation to find. Maybe it's the ambient track playing coinciding with this, but I was already enamored by what this game was doing. Anyway, back to what we're looking at. Our character seems pleased by the results of this find. He is suggesting that studies found that early man lived underwater, which is a surreal thought to consider. Only a small aspect of corruption and lived for such an enormous amount of time, far beyond what we could even fathom. We also look at the dive mask and find that it's old, less than 100 years, and covered in inscriptions, biblical in nature. Whoever had this has disappeared, presumably lost in their search. Difficult to say what they uncovered, unfortunately, but clearly someone was on the right track before us. Then we have our ancient fish, carbon dating suggesting some 10,000 years. It fed on coral and has a heavily calcified bone structure. This has been around long enough, suggesting this is within Edenic grounds. The scope of our findings is enormous, just like our ass. It's probably best to search for more. But not before being interrupted by some haunting alarm and sound. We go outside to find ourselves in darkness. And then a form is revealed to us. And tells us to leave or to die, and, quote, join God in full flesh. After beseeching us, we return to our lab and are reinvigorated to explore more of the ocean bed. Looking at ourselves in the mirror before going out, let's just find a singular siftable and a couple fish this time. Same process, though our necessity for oxygen has lowered, oddly enough. Maybe it's just our excitement about our research coming closer to fruition and realization. We gather our coral and our fish and find ourselves comforted by the dark, our character alluding to Moses seeing God. We can know God if we keep pushing onward, even if we are dizzy and losing focus. Looking at our finds. A deathless fish, which is supposed to have been born sometime in the Jurassic period, contains coral in its digestion and also has proto-human DNA proteins. How is this possible? The next fish, similar in the last, living far beyond what is thought possible. Coral, proto-human DNA, it's the same. How? Looking at the coral, origin unknown, error, studded with proto-human neuron, hyper-capable of creating consciousness field, womb of God, error, error, error. The lights cut out. We have to check outside again. Water womb world. It's time to join the angels. The closer we got to our understanding of God, the further we strayed from the light of humanity. Our body changing and destroying itself as it joined the oneness of God. And our hunger for coral is insatiable. It's a really enchanting ride, the surreality of the situation and just what it meant to be found. The character's unrelenting pursuit of the truth, there's a lot to consider here. Considering our character, he has self-reflections about God and his divine image being replicated in people, the strange considerations of having been connected to that and being severed from it. God in making us like himself, but a mortal version. He watches small versions of himself go through so many hardships and watches us pass and takes away something from it. It feels like we're just an experiment through that lens. What would us giving offerings to him even mean? Giving our pieces back? We're him giving him back unto him and praising him. Anyway, though he's full of conviction to find the truth, the reality of what exactly is happening to him in the moment is lost. He becomes one with his truth, despite being warned as such, trading in his own self, neglecting obvious signs of danger. Despite what we see ourselves, we are left to our own imaginations as to what we saw and what it means. We can only guess that as people keep exploring Gaspar's zone, it'll keep transmuting them, obvious signs being that mask we had found earlier. In the end, we've flown too close to the sun. Hopefully that dude finds joy in becoming a part of the water womb world. The well. We're going to touch on a little bit, since this is a short release and cost you only $2 tiny USD. I don't want to take away a really enjoyable experience, but I'll cover the initial ground for us all here. It's from Yames' Secret Games collection, this being the first, and if you're a Patreon subscriber to him, you'll have access to it. Or you can purchase it on itch, which is the route I went. You were sent to assist an old fella at the Atwood farm, where the previous owners fell on hard times vis-a-vis dying and loss of sanity. Pastor Emerson helped Abe, the one who lost his sanity here, and asked for yours and your pal's help. But you first want to take a peep at the old well, which had seen a lot of digging and recent bricking up. Put simply, you lower a rope and pull things up and uncover a story here. Again, I won't go too deeply into it since it's so short, but its art style is really wild and a damn good reveal at the end. But there's something eerie going on here that is definitely related to my overall topic that I'm covering here. Also, there's a cat named Jingles, and you do get to pet it. Check it out. I've mentioned before that I covered Growing My Grandpa, which, again, I highly recommend checking out my mostly spoiler-free video, and also just the game itself. It's the longest game Yames has released so far, about 2 hours in length and definitely worth the $5 price tag. The quick rundown of this game is that it takes place with you talking to a young girl, Adrian, who is having definite problems at school and at home. She's freshly new to the area and her grandfather's home. She's forced into the basement to clean up by her parents after their argument, and discovers her grandfather's old research and a strange whisker-like creature. You clean and form Grandpa through a manifestation of an intent and desire. You grow your Grandpa and discover week by week the progress of Adrian and Grandpa through the lens of her telling you her story. I'm not going to spoil this game here either, but I do want to talk about some of the documents you find, specifically the documents detailing the relationship between the similarities associated with this Whiskers Grandpa being and the angel or Heaven of Needles being noted inside the Magic Book, or Eurasian Steppe Shamanism and the Fusiform Gyrus, an interdisciplinal study in sympathetic magic. A dissertation by Jacob Hart, Adrian's Jipa. In this case, there's an account spanning multiple regions, religions, and magic. This one involves a, quote, binding of demons to a sorcerer's will, end quote, which was meant to ward off prosopagnosia, or face blindness. And thankfully, this is under the umbrella for the topic because it is a highly dangerous ritual, often associated with death. I mean, hey, you shouldn't bind yourself to a demon, but prosopagnosia is a hell of a nightmare in its own right. In Discourse on Subordination of Hidden Beings, we relate to demons by a means of offering up blood in droplets, which can be an option throughout the course of Adrian's time with Grandpa. This book states that by offering up our flesh and blood, any contracts we might be in ties with a demon or devil won't result in our harm. In Adrian's case here, we are forming a contract with Grandpa's form. She's living a poor life. Her parents are treating her like dirt, forcing her to clean up the basement, and she's going to school facing hardships by not relating to her classmates, ending up in fights, or being sent to the principal. Her offerings and sacrifices to Grandpa are simple on her terms. She just wants someone she can relate and talk to. She loved her Grandpa, and that manifests slowly through Whiskers, who is offering this contract with her, a way out of her rough situation. Now, again, I'm not going to spoil the ending of this game, but even as children, we turn to hopeful, higher beings to receive something better. Whether they are truly gods or supernatural beings is tough to say. though the research with whiskers suggests it might be more than we can understand, and in talking with it suggests its lifespan is beyond our ken. I can definitely relate in the sense that I wanted to turn to something bigger to escape the impending loss of family or friends. I didn't turn to something that was in some basement asking for blood and growing to resemble someone I cared for, unfortunately, but it's a common thread through life. Difficulty breeds hope and despair. It's easy to turn one way or the other. Despair is easiest, things don't turn out the way you want them, and what's the point of trying again? It's just going to fall apart in your hands. Minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, years of work can all turn to dust instantly. What a waste of time in my life. Hope is harder. You might still have the building blocks that tumbled, but you know where the pieces went this time, so it's not going to be as difficult to retrace the movements. You're better than you were before, so this time around you will do better, even if you are more tired than ever. But falling into both is something else. It's hopeful in a way to seek any means necessary to attain some semblance of normalcy. Through mind, body, and soul, we give pieces up so we can still stand the next day and be able to walk. But depressing in another, that the only action you see fit is turning to beyond humanity, that there isn't anything else to do about it. And usually this is the point where that can very much be true. Escaping our hole isn't feasible with other hands, so if we don't get support by something beyond, what's left? I'm starting to feel like I'm going all over the place with this, and honestly, mentally as I'm writing this, that's kind of where I've actually been. Lost and confused. Things keep hitting the proverbial fan nonstop at times, and I just feel like I've forgotten how to breathe some days. In earnest, I wonder how much further things would have to stress me out to push me to the points these people have. Forever lost on a trek, trapped in your own home by your own father, to give up on all human options and turning to becoming one with unity in a ceaseless pursuit of the truth, or abused and deeply alone. It isn't hard to understand at what point certain people fall apart. Everyone has different thresholds. Some might find the turning to these beings as odd or foolish, even if you know they'll take it all away from you, but I never even thought it strange that these characters would. Things are so dire and their lives are so important that of course they would. Unfortunately, it could absolutely be at the cost of everything they hold dear, like in Water Womb World or in Via Negativa, or even be exactly what they wanted, like in Discover My Body. I'm not religious either. I used to be, but I always understood why people prayed to something neither they nor I could see. A devotion of their time so that they could go home and feel like they could face the next day. And it works for them. Whether you see it as a placebo effect or not, it's effective. At the core of people, having some kind of faith that something will turn out positively is constantly a churning thought, even if for some the fire has faded and dim almost entirely. I don't know how to stoke that flame, but I think these games have some kind of insight on some inner machinations of people. They're a really potent approach to understanding what breaks us and what turns us to faith in whatever capacity. In essence, every action we do is a result of faith, and I don't mean that as in religious only. We trust that our actions will turn positive. You see me putting this video out in faith that I've put across an interesting point worth discussing or considering even, as well as it being my sacrifice to the festering being known as YouTube, to hopefully guide some of you here and to want to listen to my loose ramblings trying to formulate a point. I'm still trying to stoke the flame for this video. I've come back to the script several times over and over, just adding a little bit more to make sure things sound a little bit better, because these games deserve some good discussions, which more than anything is me inviting you to play them and to talk about them, make more points about them. There's some really interesting things to talk about here. And also, this is my blood and soul I'm giving to algorithm in these trying times as a content creator. My dark pack to bring me into the limelight so that I can get scared and be like, hey, I have so many ideas for videos. Tune in 6 months from now and, maybe I'll tell you a new thought about one and nary a thing to show for the last idea. I really adore these games, and even if I've spoiled them in their entirety to you, I do recommend checking them all out. Just the free ones alone should be a couple hour ride at most, and you'll find yourself on a really enjoyable ride at that. Yames, please keep creating these games. They speak to me deeply. I'll keep looking and smiling. I went through a plethora of different thoughts going through these games. They're more than what I'm seeing here, and there's definitely aspects I've overlooked or glossed over. But this is the through line I was seeing to try to tie this video together. And this video took a lot longer than I had intended, admittedly. Not just the game's content affected my thoughts. Work and life has been a roller coaster. But writing this portion of the video, post my conclusion, I want to clarify I'm mentally doing a lot better. Never mind, I lied. Everything hit the fan. I lied again. Everything's gonna be alright. God, the brain is a funny thing, isn't it? I also lied. It won't change the fact that my video output is going to be slow. Work has slowed my progress quite a bit. I do have a lot of ideas going forward with videos, a couple in mind that I haven't even had a chance to start recording for. That said, please keep looking forward to that. Hit the little subscribe button, and if you feel a want, check out my Patreon. I'm going to post the drafts and notes for this video in some fashion on there, since I did rewrite things a few times and had a slightly different approach to what I wanted to talk about initially. Also, still, please check out my friends and brothers' channels for other content. Schmelnick for his longer playthroughs of various games, including horror. He's constantly uploading, so there's a wealth of content there. BCWare's itch page, maybe it'll motivate him to make more if you check out his work. And my brother, the Impard Z Targetable, who is working on various projects with a definitive comedic and insightful approach. Oh, and before I forget, if you've reached the end of this video and want to have some kind of small hand in an upcoming video, I would like to talk about the importance of musical theming in games. And if you guys have any particular game soundtrack themes that you tightly associate with something emotional in you, please let me know on my community post about it on YouTube. Also, I'm intending at some point to have another sub-channel. I'll make a more definitive announcement about that later. That is going to be more focused on me not talking so much. If you look at my older content on my channel here, you'll find that a lot of it is just weird video game edits and stuff. That's how I used to approach things. I haven't really wanted to do that in some time since starting all this stuff, but recently I've kind of had an urge to kind of occasionally have some of that style of content again, but I didn't want to upload it on here and kind of mix things up. YouTube has a weird way about algorithm stuff that I just didn't want to mess with, so I'm going to eventually have a separate channel where I'm going to post stuff like that if you want to check that out and you don't have to listen to my voice. But anyway, thanks again for watching my video, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.